Warning. Despite what the name may suggest, Cat CPR does not demonstrate how to perform CPR on a cat, though it is understandable that you came here thinking that it does. If your precious kitty cat is having an actual feline medical emergency, then stop listening to this now and contact your veterinarian immediately. However, once the emergency is over, we welcome your return. Thank you.
It's like if Bart Ehrman was a dentist. You know how you see those commercials where it says 9 out of 10 dentists agree? Bart Ehrman is that one dentist. It's like, nope, do not take this toothpaste. Don't do it whatsoever. He's the one.
He's the one.
He's the one.
He's the one. He's the contrary one.
We're losing him.
Not on my watch.
Clear.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Cat CPR. I'm Jeremiah.
And I'm Matt.
And this is a special episode of Cat CPR for a couple reasons. Number one, it's number 10. For number one, it's number 10.
Double digits.
Double digits. We made it.
That's big.
Now, I wanted to think that means because we do it once a month that we're actually coming up on a year. But there's a few times where we did 2 episodes in a month. So that's not correct,
we did.
Right? Yeah.
We did.
Yeah.
Well, our first episodes... Well, our first episode we recorded 5 times, 4 times.
Yeah.
And I think
released it once, but recorded 5 times.
I think we started recording in October.
October, is that when it was?
I think it was. So we're getting close.
But we released in January. And then
we did. We did.
Okay, it was in January.
Because it took us 5 times.
Right. But that makes it easy to remember. When it's the start of the new year, we know we've been doing that for a year. So we've been doing it about 8 months then. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this is a little bit different as well and this is the other reason why this is a special episode, because we're recording in the evening rather than the morning.
It is.
We're both morning people, right? I know I'm a morning.
So.
You're a morning person too,
Very
right?
much so.
Okay.
Yes.
Anything you're going to get done is going to happen in the morning.
Yeah.
I feel like my mind is moving. You see where we're going with this. My mind moves a little bit faster in the morning.
Yes.
Yours does as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So 7:00 p.m. on a Tuesday after a work day. I got to imagine this is the equivalent of pulling an all-nighter for middle-aged men.
It very well could be. It very well could be. Although I did have a coffee later in the afternoon, so hopefully I'm still feeling it. So
okay. Hopefully
we're still going to do okay. But if we start like losing words, that's what happens to me.
Yeah.
It's like I have trouble finding the words sometimes when it's a little bit later at night. So if I'm doing like studies with people late at night, it's like it takes me like 30 seconds to find the word.
Yeah.
You know, what is word? You know? So that might happen here.
Right.
We might ramble a little bit more.
We're saying this is a precursor.
Yeah.
And if you hear a lot of ums and ahs, we're going to try to edit those out. I mean, we're using AI a little bit. Are we using AI now a little for our editing? Just for 2 cameras?
Not yet. What we are using, so we use DaVinci Resolve for our editing tool, and they have a automatic camera switcher now. So before I had to go through and manually switch the camera angles.
Every time, like when I would talk, you would have to switch.
Yes.
And then when you would talk,
yes,
it'd have to switch. Okay.
So that would take me, because I'm a little bit OCD.
Mm-hmm. I like to say particular.
Yes.
After working with Matt, I say he is a particular individual.
He's just being nice.
Yes, I am. No.
But it would take me for a 2-hour episode. It would take me about 4 hours,
about twice as long as the episode
to do the camera switching. Now it literally takes about 90 seconds, 60 seconds. But I still have to go through and just check. But I'm able to skip through the long dialogue parts. Man, it takes it'll take me like 30 minutes.
Working smarter
to do it. So
working smarter.
Eventually, AI will catch up to where, man, we'll just record this thing, put it through the AI, and it'll make us sound great. It'll make us look great. It'll make everything great.
Everything's great.
It might even change the content, you know?
Who knows? AI doesn't like what we're producing, so it works in something else. Yeah, I was actually kind of chuckling a little bit about our email correspondence as we were trying to work out a date and time to make this happen. Because it's not like, I mean, it's an exceptional month. We have a lot going on Saturdays, which is when we normally do it. Yeah. But because we're both morning people and not night people, we're looking at these evenings we had free. We're like, I
was like, bro, you're killing me.
Yeah. But you know what? One of the key traits and characteristics of a Christian is supposed to be the ability to persevere despite the circumstances and situation, right?
Yeah.
So we're feeling a little bit tired. It's kind of somewhat the middle of the week. It's only Tuesday. But, we want to get together. We want to produce this. We want to encourage people. We want to go through evidence. And we've got some good evidence to go through today, haven't we?
We do. We're going to talk about the book of Hebrews today.
Hebrews.
Yeah. So we're in the general epistles. They're also called the Catholic epistles, but it's Catholic with a small c. The word Catholic means universal, right?
You ever notice that on like a Microsoft Word, when I do Catholic with a lowercase c, it says you've misspelled this. It's supposed to have a capital C. Is that
interesting?
Yeah,
I've never noticed.
Never noticed that. Okay,
no.
Okay,
I ought to pay attention to that next time.
But it means universal.
Yeah, it just means universal. So that's why they did it with a capital C. So when you go through the patristic writers, sometimes they'll use the term Catholic in regard to the church. Recognize that that's not the entity that we now know as the Catholic Church. That's really referring to universal.
Okay.
The church over the world, which I believe in a Catholic church. I believe in a church that's over, Jesus has one church. And it is a universal church.
You know how I'm the one who does the editing, where I always say in this episode, when we do each episode of the podcast, I'm going to take that completely out of context. And coming up in this episode, Matt Hartford saying, I believe in the Catholic Church.
That would be horrible. No. Sure. Whatever.
Context is important, cats. Context is important.
It is. Should I change?
No. We're good. We're good. Let's keep going.
Put a frock on or whatever. I don't even know what it's called. But no, I wanted to do all 5 of the general epistles. So the general epistles are Hebrews, James, 1st and 2nd Peter, and Jude.
Okay.
Now, we haven't done Acts, but we'll probably mention it in the next episode because people typically look at Acts and Luke together. I believe we did that a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, quite honestly, the person who wrote Luke wrote Acts.
Right.
So as we go through and looked at who wrote the Gospel of Luke, that's who wrote the book of Acts.
Kind of connected there, so not
hugely.
Yeah, and Acts has kind of always been considered one of its own books. And general epistles, it's that's somewhat of a new term as me. So I guess that's basically, if it's not a gospel, if it's not Acts, if it's not a Pauline epistle, then it's a general epistle. Well, but Revelation does not count either.
Right, correct. So that's typically how they look at it. Okay. Yeah, I mean they're more universal. If you look at Paul, he wrote to the Romans, to the Corinthians, to the Galatians, to the Colossians, the Philippians, Thessalonians. He wrote to specific people. They became general in circulation, but the general epistles are typically written to a broader audience, not anyone that's super specific at a local congregation. Now, the book of Hebrews obviously was written to Hebrew Christians. We'll look at James. James was written to a specific kind of group, not a specific local congregation or a specific person, right? So that's another reason why they're called general.
Okay. And Catholic. Peter writes to those who were in dispersion. I'm starting to do that Wednesday night study on Peter.
Yeah.
So I was looking at it, I was like, well, who are these guys who are in dispersion? What does dispersion even mean? So I get it, but it's to a broader audience.
It is. And that's why they're called Catholic as well, because it's to a universal audience. It's to the whole church. But we will see with the book of Hebrews that it is a little bit different. So the reason we're not doing all 5 tonight,
time has got to be
because that's going to be our bedtime by the time
seriously.
we even get close to getting done. But the actual reason is, as I started to write this episode, I was just coming up with a lot of information. So in my humble opinion, this is completely my personal viewpoint. I think the most important book in the New Testament is Romans.
Okay.
I think very close after that is the book of Hebrews.
Hebrews is really what kind of bridges the gap, I think, big time between the Old Testament and the New Testament in terms of understanding,
Absolutely.
The Old Covenant to the New Covenant. Not to say the Gospels don't do that, because we see how Jesus fulfills a lot of the prophecies that were written. But Hebrews is the book that really, I think, if you look at the Old Testament through the lens of the through the book of Hebrews, things begin to make a little bit more sense. And you understand not just what was in there, but why it was in there.
Yeah, it is. And you hit the nail on the head. It is the lens that interprets the most important aspects of the Old Covenant.
Right.
So I don't think you can understand really the purpose of the Old Covenant without the book of Hebrews.
Right.
Paul does a good job of laying a lot of this stuff out, which is going to play into what we talk about authorship a little bit.
Ooh.
Sneak peek. But it's necessary. I mean, not to go off on a tangent, but I don't know how somebody can be dispensational after they read the book of Hebrews.
Right.
I don't understand. I'm not dispensational. Obviously, I just said that.
When it's really talking about you have come to the heavenly Jerusalem.
Yes, yes. And, when there's a change of priesthood, there's a change of law.
Right.
And that covenant is obsolete, ready to disappear. So is he going to change the law start a new covenant. The old covenant's obsolete and ready to disappear, which it did in 70 AD. All the remnants of it disappeared. And then God, 2,000 years later, is going to say, you know what? Let's kick that thing off again.
So that also kind of gives us an idea already of the dating of Hebrews, because if he says in Hebrews that it's ready to disappear and it disappeared in 70 AD, that means it would have been written before then, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we'll get into that.
Not to get ahead, right? I know
that's fine. I'm doing it. You can do it.
Right.
Let's do it.
All right.
But so because Hebrews is so important, and because it had a challenge with the canon being accepted, what I wanted to do was make sure that it got the proper attention that it deserves.
Sure.
So that's why we're doing that.
Okay. Great.
We're going to make sure, because it is the only one of the books that's anonymous.
Yeah.
So we need to figure out who the author is. We can't figure it out with 100% certainty.
Well, we know who the author is. Who's the writer, right?
Well, there you go. God.
Okay, no.
God's the author. But yeah, who's the writer of it?
Right.
And because of that, we can see through early church history, they had a very, very strong opinion. And I believe it was fairly unified. And even modern scholars are surprisingly unified on the flavor of it, progressive scholars and conservative scholars.
How about that?
It's amazing. But the acceptance into the canon is a little sticky.
Okay.
It's not the most contested book. That dubious honor goes to 2 Peter. I've been studying that one out too recently.
That's one of the most contested books?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And you'll see why when we go through it when I write the script. But it's cool. The stuff that I found on it, it's really cool. So I have some interesting theories that we will go over.
Okay. All right.
But outline of the episode?
Yeah. What's the approach? How are we going to do it?
Yeah. We're going to take a look at the characteristics of the book, date, writing style, themes, those types of things. Then we'll dive into authorship. We'll look at the historical patristic evidence, the early church writers. We're going to do something a little different. We're going to look at the modern scholarly view of it, conservative and progressive. And because this is our podcast, we're going to look at my approach.
All right. I like it.
What I think it might be. And I'll give you evidence for why I think it is that. But you know what? I don't have a strong conviction on it.
Do you think you're more in the modern or progressive camp when it comes to?
Oh, I am very conservative.
Very conservative. Okay.
Yeah. So
that's what I figured. But the fact that both of them agree, that makes me think that they have, some similarities. I didn't know if you, kind of leaned one way or the other. Okay.
No, I think this is a completely naturalistic book. I think someone just decided to write it, and there were a bunch of editors, and they, it just evolved over time.
Okay. Well, I was talking about more of the foundational stuff, but yeah. Okay. Let's.
It's like, you just accuse me of being progressive.
No. Well, if we're saying, when you say the progressive and the modern scholars agree on it, I wasn't thinking of the
progressive and conservative.
Conservative scholars.
Yeah.
Okay.
Both in the modern camp.
Both in the modern camp.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
That was my confusion. Okay.
Yep.
My apology. Look, I apologize on camp. All right.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
See, we're loopy. It's late.
It's late. Some people are going to be commenting, you guys should do more at nighttime.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And lastly, we're going to take a look at canon reception.
How it was received.
That's
interesting to me as well, because given the fact that you just mentioned that, Romans you think is one of the most important books in the New Testament, Hebrews being the second most important, it's kind of interesting to think that it would have been contested, given how important it is.
Yeah, it is.
I'll be interested to get into that part of it. Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's start off with taking a look at the date of the book.
Okay.
Conservative and progressives alike. Mm-hmm. This is interesting. They both place Hebrews before the destruction of the temple. For the most part, progressives do sometimes have a little bit of a later date, like after the 1st century into the 2nd century. But that makes no sense, because if it was any time after the destruction of Jerusalem, or even during the siege of Jerusalem, something would have been mentioned in the book.
Right. And I can understand why they would agree on that, because there's nothing really directly in Hebrews that talks about the destruction of the temple like Jesus did in the Gospels. Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons they debate the Gospels, right? Because how could have Jesus known that the temple was going to be destroyed if he said those things before 70 AD? Right. Hebrews talks about the old covenant becoming obsolete, but it doesn't necessarily specifically talk about the destruction of the temple. One could say the reason it's going to be obsolete is because there's not going to be able to worship God in. Right?
And that would have been the perfect time to say that, right? At the end of chapter 8.
It would have been. It would have been.
And so what he does say, if you think about it, what he does say there is it's ready to disappear. So God is letting us know, actually, that the destruction of Jerusalem is going to take place.
Indirectly in Hebrews, right?
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Indirectly.
Indirectly in Hebrews, he's saying the destruction is going to take place because he's saying it's ready to disappear. The Jewish mindset would be, well, what do you mean it's ready to disappear?
Mm-hmm.
The temple's here. We have the priesthood. We're offering sacrifices. We're going through the Mosaic covenant, just like Moses wrote.
Right.
But the writer of Hebrews is letting them know it's going to disappear. So there is a prophetic element of the destruction of Jerusalem in there, in the concept of it being obsolete.
But a progressive mindset, if he is not thinking about this through the prophetic lens, he could say, well, they don't directly mention. Correct. And if they're not familiar with that stuff. So I can understand why they would agree on that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because if it was a naturalistic perspective, then yeah, he's going to mention, he's like, by the way, guys, there's no more temple there.
Right.
Right. So what are y'all doing?
Right.
So yeah, there's that. The earlier date, of course, pre-70, we just talked about that. Mm-hmm. There's no mention of the temple. And so when you think about the later date, 70 to 95, the reason they say it is the style and theological maturity. So it's there, again, there's that evolutionary mindset of the naturalistic view where they're like, okay, when you look at the book of Hebrews, it is theologically mature.
It's a very technical book.
And it's deep.
It's deep.
It is written from somebody with a strong understanding of the law, a very strong understanding of the covenant, very scholarly in its approach, which I think lends to who wrote it. But again, we'll get into that.
We'll get there. Yeah.
And that's the main reason why they think that is because of how theologically mature it is. So they think it's more of a second generation Christian audience type of a thing. But again, the big elephant in the room would have been there's no more temple, there's no more covenant, it's all gone.
Right.
So I don't think there's a whole lot of people that hold to the post 70 viewpoint. Now, the earliest manuscript evidence that I found was P46, about 200. It's the Chester Beatty Papyrus. Contains Hebrews after Romans. So it puts it in the Pauline category in arrangement. You have P13, which is 225 to 250, contains portions of Hebrews, quite a few portions of Hebrews. And then you have P114, AD, 3rd century. It's a fragment of Hebrews 1. So the evidence isn't as early as some of the other things that we see, but it's still fairly early.
Yeah,
so we're
still
talking,
not far off from them.
Yeah, we're talking about late 2nd century, early 3rd century type of a concept.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Vaticanus and Sinaiticus both include the book of Hebrews. Key characteristics. Let's take a look at the style of writing. Now, this is, again, lends to, I think, who actually wrote it. It's considered among the most polished and rhetorically sophisticated Greek in the New Testament. Now, do you remember who else has probably the most polished and sophisticated writing in the New Testament?
Yeah, Luke. Yeah.
Specifically, what passage do you remember?
What passage did Luke write that shows that he's very polished?
Yeah, it's like the highlight of his writings.
I don't.
Okay, it's the prologue of the Gospel, Luke 1 through 4.
Oh, okay.
It's like viewed as the pinnacle. Hebrews
really?
chapter.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, because
did we talk about that last episode?
We did.
Part 2?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
I know we talked about him writing to Theophilus and who was that, but I mean, I don't remember us mentioning. Okay.
Yeah,
it was a long episode. It was a long episode.
It was a long episode.
Do you remember everything? No, so don't. All right.
No, it's fine. And we live these episodes.
Right.
We don't watch them afterwards at all. If
we've watched it enough.
If we can help it.
We've lived it and watched it enough.
So it does skip a little bit. But yeah, it's among the most polished that exists, especially Hebrews 1 through 4. So it's interesting. The prologue of Hebrews and the prologue of Luke are very, very similar.
Mm-hmm.
But
again, so we're not talking about authorship yet, though, right? We're just talking about style.
We're not.
But you're alluding to authorship.
Alluding.
Possible.
Authorship.
Okay.
So I'm dropping Paul and I'm dropping Luke.
Yeah.
So where are we going with this? So it features, and we're not going to get into this.
Sure.
It's late. I'm probably not going to pronounce these things right.
Okay.
And don't ask me what they are.
Post-editing shows that you will pronounce them right.
Yeah. And,
It's going to be some voiceover. And man, his voice got deep.
Those never go good, do they?
They don't. They don't.
We should do it just for fun.
Yeah, I think we should. It's like mispronounce Melchizedek, and then I'll voice over with
Melchizedek, like Nebuchadnezzar.
My kids used to have toys like that, like they would sing songs, but you'd have to program in the computer to put in your kid's name. So it'd be like me and my friend Maya Dillon. We love to do everything together. It'd be like that. It's like, man, they're not even trying on this. Okay, anyway, moving on.
We're kind of going off the rails.
We are. All right.
Whew. Focus, man. Focus. All right. No foreign substances were ingested before this. We don't do that stuff. All right. So here are some of the rhetorical devices. We have balanced and periodic sentences. The build on sentences, right? Those are in there quite a bit. Something called chiasm, which is inverted parallelism. I'm sure we know that stuff, right?
Right.
So an example is
yes, the inverted parallelism.
Yes.
Parallelism.
That's found in Hebrews chapter 2, verses 8 and 9. Okay. So becoming a little lower than the angels, that section.
Okay.
So
gotcha.
And read it, you'll know what inverted parallelism is. I'm not even going to pronounce this last one. You want to try it?
Ascendaton.
Let's do that. Ascendaton.
Uh-huh.
Ascendaton. I don't know. And it's for dramatic effect. Basically, I recognize it when I see it. Hebrews 12, 22 through 24. You have come to Mount Zion, the heavenly truth, build, and they're all escalating until the very end. It's a great construction. You see that in there. It's pretty awesome. Uses over 150 words not found elsewhere in the New Testament. Do you remember what that term is called?
No.
Hapax legomena.
How did I not remember that term?
Hapax.
I probably would have said hypox. I probably could have that, but the whole part of it, no, I can't even.
Very similar to chickenpox. So hapax.
Hapax. Okay.
Yeah.
No. Okay.
But without the marks on the body. I just got to stop.
Marks on the Bible. Yeah.
Shares polished vocabulary and structure with Luke and Acts.
Well, but see, here's the thing. If I'm looking at the other side of this, I mean, to say that Luke is the only person who was a polished writer in Greek, I mean, could there be other writers who are polished in Greek that could...
Not in the New Testament?
Right. Well, I mean, of course, not comparing to anyone else in the New Testament, which could also lend that maybe this is a unique writer, not someone who wrote another...
It very well could be.
Okay.
It very well could be.
Right.
The problem is we have no idea.
Yeah.
No idea.
Right.
So
we're just saying that there's a lot of similarities.
There's a lot of similarities.
To be honest with you, I had never really thought of Luke for writing Hebrews. I had thought, and I know we're going to talk more about potential authors. Like most people, I said, well, Paul could be a strong contender, being that he was a Pharisee. Right. And there's a lot of things about the law here.
Right.
I've heard some people say Apollos before.
Yep. I've heard Apollos. We've seen Barnabas.
All right, but we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah,
okay.
A little bit. Yep.
Let's keep going. Let's keep going.
So
stick with the outline.
Yep. So thematic elements, obviously the superiority of Christ, right? Greater than the angels, greater than Moses, greater than the Levitical priesthood, has a better sacrifice. That's what I'm saying. You have the writer of Hebrews, what he is doing is he's taken all of those Old Testament covenant aspects and he's looking at them in light of what Christ did and who he is and the roles he takes on. And they're superior in every way. I mean, let's look at this in real life. Why would anyone go from a superior situation back to one that was powerless? It doesn't make any sense to me. No, it
doesn't. You don't. I mean, if you have something new, you don't go back to what's old.
Right. Unless, some people do because it's nostalgic. But,
right.
So maybe that's the reason why he's going to go back to the old covenant system among dispensational views. But
I find the argument as to why you would not go back to the old as presented in Hebrews to be very strong.
Very strong. Very strong.
I mean, if the blood of goats and rams did not perfect the conscience of the worshiper, or bulls and goats, whatever animals he references there, you can never get a better sacrifice than Christ. So why would we go back to that? Right.
Yep. Exactly. So again, I understand dispensationalism rests on a whole other set of arguments.
It does.
And I get that. And we're not talking about that in this episode. We'll probably do one where we do talk about it. in a very respectful way. I'm not trying to throw anybody's beliefs under the bus. But you look at the book of Hebrews and it just makes so much sense.
Sure.
And then we have Christ as the eternal high priest, and it connects Psalm 110, verse 4 with Melchizedek. Hebrews is the only place that we get the whole Melchizedek connection. And the writer spends a long time on it.
We hear more about Melchizedek in Hebrews, I think, than we do in the Old Testament, don't we?
Yeah, it's only a few verses
right.
In Genesis and then in Psalms.
Which is kind of interesting. I find that very interesting because you get a lot about Melchizedek. And if you go back and say, well, who was this guy? And you go back to the Old Testament to look, you're like, this doesn't give me too much.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And so without the book of Hebrews, we don't have a basis for the high priesthood of Christ. And that's a huge gap in New Testament theology.
Right.
So that actually, from a thematic theological point, plays into why Hebrews is essential to the New Testament.
Right.
So that's another reason why we're spending so much time on this, because it is so essential on so many levels.
Absolutely.
Yep. It also develops a unique priestly Christology, not found elsewhere in the New Testament, not just around the New Testament, but about the futility of the Old Covenant priesthood and the benefit of the New Covenant priesthood.
Like the fact that they would die and somebody else had to take over, whereas in the New Covenant, we have an eternal high priest.
Yeah, and ones that have to offer sacrifices for their own sins, and he's separated from sinners. And his priesthood is not on the basis of law, but on the power of an indestructible life. I mean, come on, man. You can't get much more powerful than that, right?
Right. Once again, it goes back to the question, why would you go back to the old?
Yeah, exactly. It presents him as a mediator of a better covenant. And we have Jeremiah 31 being quoted quite a bit in Hebrews chapter 8. There's another writer that talks about mediator in the New Testament. There's one mediator between God and man. Paul, yeah. I'm just thinking, I knew it was Paul, but I was like, well, which book is that in? I'm blanking. Again, it's late.
So it's late.
It's Paul. So
right.
We'll get into the thematic stuff here in a second, and then exhortation to endurance. Again, this, we're not getting into the authorship aspect here, just talking about the theme of the book, but man, there's a lot of warnings, but then a lot of encouragement to persevere.
There is
warnings about falling away, which if you can't fall away, why warn about it? But that's another episode, right?
Sure.
But why, or then we have the concept of persevering, which is very prevalent in chapter 12. I mean, it's like the whole chapter. And that's where he draws attention to the concept of, man, you haven't come to Mount Zion or Mount Sinai. You come to Mount Zion. And as a push for why we need to persevere and again, not go back to that old covenant system.
Right. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Paul's writings in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, where he says these things have been written down for an example for us. The fact that the writer of Hebrews is referencing some of those things in the Old Testament and the need to persevere. This is also kind of an example. We can draw some parallels there. But,
I think so. So bottom line about the theme, here's my interpretation. It resonates with Pauline theology, but with a distinct rhetorical voice that closely matches Luke and Acts. And that actually falls into some of the authorship discussion that we'll have. Intended audience, primarily Jewish Christians, familiar with the Old Testament.
Now I've heard people say this is like for Jewish Christians who were actually thinking about going back to the Old Covenant because of the pressure.
Yes.
Because I mean, we read about in the book of Acts, where there was some of the Pharisees were saying, look, you have to be circumcised and obey the law of Moses in order to be saved. So I've heard that this audience were some of those folks who were receiving pressure from the Jews to go back to the law. Yeah,
you can see that in chapter 5 and 6, because in chapter 5, the writer states, verse 8, Jesus learned obedience through the things that he suffered. So this whole suffering thing, you guys joyfully accepted the seizure of your property. You did really great things. It would be unjust for me to forgot to forget all the good things that you've done. Obviously paraphrasing here, but then a warning about falling away and having it impossible to renew them again to repentance, since they again crucified the Son of God and put him to open shame. So there's this concept of, look, I know you guys are suffering. I know you accepted the seizure of your property joyfully. Don't let that be in vain. And here's a little warning about another reason why you shouldn't. Right. So that's very important. Mm-hmm. So primarily Jewish audience, which I think personally is one of the reasons why there might have been an issue with its acceptance into the canon. Because once Jerusalem was destroyed, maybe they would have thought, this book, what a lot of the purpose of it is rendered moot. But what we see in it, it's definitely not, because it actually doesn't even matter when Jerusalem was destroyed.
Right, it really doesn't.
It doesn't matter, because this is really applicable.
Right.
It's hugely applicable. Right.
Okay.
So we also see a heavy reliance on the Septuagint, quoting or alluding to the Old Testament over 30 times. Mm-hmm. So that's a really good indication of what's going on. It was
kind of like the Gospel of Matthew, where it's primarily written for Jewish people. That's why we see so many references to the Old Testament. This is things that they would have been familiar with.
Yes.
Unlike the Gospel of Mark, which we don't get as much of that because it's primarily written to Gentiles.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And it was written from Italy, because we see at the end of the book of Hebrews, those from Italy greet you. Mm-hmm. So this lets us know it was probably written from Rome or somewhere around Rome, which is going to be really interesting when we talk about canon acceptance.
Sure.
Absolutely.
I think authorship too.
Yes.
But yeah,
I think so. So detailed explanation of Levitical rituals, sacrifices, priesthood, presumes a deep Jewish background, likely a Hellenistic Jewish Christian audience, Greek-speaking, steeped in Jewish tradition, possibly Rome, Alexandria, but then also, of course, in Jerusalem. Because I do believe there's some evidence that this was primarily written for them, and then the Greek audience was a secondary thought process. Not necessarily secondary, but it was the next step. It wasn't the primary step.
Sure.
It was something that took place later. Other distinctive features: only New Testament epistle without a named author. Now, some people would say, well, the Gospels don't have a named author. We're going to get to that here. I know this isn't about the Gospels, but there's something in here about when it was accepted and why it wasn't accepted as canon right away in some places that really puts the nail in the coffin that the Gospels were not anonymous.
Great.
But, well,
okay. I mean,
little.
Yeah,
tidbits,
this is good stuff.
It's tantalizing.
It is.
Right? If you're a nerd like us, it's
Indeed.
tantalizing.
Most of the cats that listen are nerds, so that's okay. We're in our element.
Yeah, that sounds good. Like I said, concludes with epistolary elements, which is interesting. So what we mean by that, it ends like an epistle. Mm-hmm. He's like, Timothy mentions names and mentions coming to you. And,
which is what we see with a lot of the epistles.
Yes. Specifically.
Paul.
Yeah. Specifically Paul, because he mentions that. Mm-hmm. So then we have alternates between theological exposition and exhortation. It's just interesting. He'll go and exhort, and then he'll give a theological exposition, and then he'll exhort off that theological exposition.
Which is like preaching 101, kind of.
Yeah.
You're providing information, but you're also encouraging people with said information.
Yep.
So it's really, when you think about it, Hebrews is actually a great blueprint on how to preach.
It really is. It really is. And it's reminiscent of Paul's writings.
It very much is.
Because Paul does that all the time. He'll give these detailed theological points and then bring up amazing exhortation from of it.
And usually you kind of see that. And again, this is kind of going off a little bit of a tangent. Some preachers, they do a little bit of more of one and not the other. They'll provide a lot of information. People are like, well, great. That's cool. What am I supposed to do with that? Or they just encourage people and they're like, well, what is the source of this encouragement? What's your basis? So Hebrews, again, I think it has a really great mix of that. And it's, like I said, blueprint for preaching 101.
It's fantastic. And this, I read this somewhere. It says, reads like a written sermon designed for public reading, but later circulated with letter-like elements.
Yeah, I think that's a great description.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. I did not come up with that. All right, authorship.
Let's
have some fun.
Yeah, this is going to be good. I think when I was looking over the outline, I think this is one of the things I was most looking forward to getting into, because it is anonymous. There's a lot of speculation. So I was looking forward to seeing some of the research that you'd perform to see if we can speculate strongly.
Yes. And I think we can.
Yeah.
I've always been up in the air about the authorship of this, and I was able to dive pretty deep into this, and now I'm Again, it's not a conviction at all, but I have a very strong opinion.
I've always leaned towards Paul, personally. I've always leaned towards Paul because, like I said, some of the things that you read, the fact that he was a Pharisee, there's a lot of Old kind of Testament references in there. This is obviously someone who was familiar with the law. The way that the letter ends, the style of writing, we've got information and we've got exhortation. So I've always kind of leaned that way, but Paul also usually says, I, Paul.
Right.
He opens up his letters and it's ending with, letting us know who wrote it.
Exactly.
So that sticks out to me a little bit.
Yeah.
But you got to imagine, Paul, he was the apostle to the Gentiles, right?
Yes.
Whereas he would say Peter is the apostle to the Jews. You got to imagine that Paul would we know in the book of Acts, Paul wanted to preach to his own people.
Yeah.
I mean, he would go into the synagogues and he was trying to convince them because they were familiar with the scriptures and, what we know is the Old Testament, right? You got to imagine that he would probably want to put something down in writing to say, listen, you guys, this is my last ditch effort. This is why you need to get on board with Christ. I could see him doing that.
Yes. Yes. And I could see why, if he were to write to the Hebrews, why it would be anonymous. Because just my opinion. Hear me out, okay? Hear me out.
Yeah.
Hear me out. So I'm
probably getting ahead of myself.
No, it's okay. This is fine. This is fine.
Okay.
I've got an outline, so I won't get lost.
Okay.
We could go off the path.
Right.
We're dropping breadcrumbs to get back. Paul did not have a good reputation among the Jewish Christians.
Right.
Especially in Jerusalem.
Right.
He did some bad stuff. And I think that's one of the reasons why God had him be the apostle to the Gentiles. Get away from your past. Get into an area where they don't know you.
Yeah.
And, that way you'll have a clean slate, so to speak. I mean, he still suffered a lot.
He did.
Right?
He did.
But it wasn't because of what he had done.
Right.
And I think sometimes that's a really good thing for people to do. Especially when you come out of the world and come into Christ, sometimes you got to make that clean break from the past.
You do. And the people of the past sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, especially those that don't agree with what you're doing and have a strong pull on you.
Sure.
It's good to, maintain relationship somewhat for redemptive purposes, but really turn that into a redemptive relationship as much as possible. Now, sometimes you can't do that.
No.
But the past can really hold a big sway on people. And Paul even says in 1 Corinthians 15:33 that bad company corrupts good morals.
He does.
We need to be, and he says, don't be deceived, which we could deceive ourselves in that regard. But we're going to look at the patristic quotes first. Oh, yeah. So that's why I think it's anonymous, that it could have been anonymous, because he didn't necessarily want to put his name on it. Because
then they would probably dismiss it right away if they saw it was from Paul.
They might have had a problem with it.
Yeah.
But that's a minority little thought that just sprung into my head that could probably be easily disproved or dismissed.
Right.
So that's not a main thing that I had. It was just something I thought of.
We're not saying it's the gospel.
No.
Yeah? See what I did there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's take a look at what the early church writer said. So about 180 to 200 in Alexandria, Egypt, there was a guy by the name of Pantinus or Pantinus. Not really sure how it would be pronounced.
Okay.
I think of the shampoo Pantene.
That's what I was just thinking. Pantene, yeah.
And then just add us on the end, right?
Right.
So, late second century, early third century. And he's quoted in Eusebius. Now, this guy is the mentor and teacher of Clement of Alexandria.
Okay.
All right. So that's going to become important with the next one. But here's his quote that Eusebius captures. He says, the epistle to the Hebrews he declared to be the work of Paul, and that it was written to the Hebrews in the Hebrew language, but that Luke, having carefully translated it, published it for the Greeks. Hence, the same character of style is found in this epistle and in the Acts.
So they're saying that Paul wrote it, but Luke translated it to Greek.
Yes. And Paul wrote it.
I kind of like that.
Yeah.
I kind of like that.
Oh, yeah. And Paul wrote it in Hebrew.
Yeah.
Now,
so translating to Greek, you would see that little bit of Luke's style.
You would totally see Luke's style.
Oh,
because
man.
Anytime you translate, so if you've ever, like I've preached with translators before, a couple of times, well, several times. And one of the things that you notice is that sometimes you'll say something and it's like 5-word sentence. And it'll take them 30 seconds to translate it. So they're translating the concepts to get the thought right, not necessarily doing it word for word, because you can't do that when you translate. Right. And then sometimes you'll have this, there's times I'll have a 1 minute long sentence and my translator would say something like 5 seconds. And the first time that happened, I just kind of looked at him and I'm like,
that's it?
You got that right? He's like, yeah, we got that.
I mean, is it kind of like when he's like, man, I was having a Bible study with somebody and it was so cool. And cool, of course, can mean temperature. Yeah. So, I mean, some of this American slang, it would take a little bit longer to say. I was having a Bible study with someone and the conditions were very favorable.
Yes.
Right.
And when you do translate with a translator who maybe is a little bit more literal, you can't use slang.
Can't use stuff like that.
No.
Right? I've heard humor doesn't translate well either.
No.
Right. Yeah.
No, not at all.
See, I think God wanted me to preach in America because, I work in a lot of humor. I don't think I would flounder with a translator. Maybe, I don't know. But
it hamstrings you. It really does. Now if you have a translator that's really good and understands American humor, they can let you know if it's going to translate.
Right.
I would go over my messages ahead of time with somebody, and I would say, okay, here's Alan, here's what we're going to be doing. And they say, okay, well, explain this concept. What do you mean by that?
Yeah.
And then, my humor, your humor too, is really, it's off the cuff.
Right.
Right. So that would be a little bit more of a challenge.
So tell you, that joke is not going to fly, bro. Do not say that joke. It's not going to fly. Okay.
And I think what ends up happening is they just don't translate it.
Right. It's like moving on.
Right. So if that's the case, if Paul wrote in Hebrews and Luke translated into Greek, it's going to have a Luke flavor because he has to take the concepts and put them into Greek. And Hebrew / Aramaic is a more limited language.
Right.
Greek is way more
very specific.
Polished. And because Luke was a companion of Paul, he would have known the gist of what he was talking about, right? And would have had to use his own writing style to get it. And of course, the inspiration of the Holy Spirit to make sure that it's given the way the Holy Spirit wants it to be given, using Luke's writing style. So, man,
I love that so much. I wish it could be proven.
Yeah.
I love it so much.
Yeah. Me too.
I wish it could be proven because the idea of Paul and Luke collaborating on this amazing book, that would just kind of level it up for me a little bit. You know what I mean? But again, I love that idea so much. I wish it could be proven.
Yeah, me too. But when we think about it, the Gospel of Luke might have been a little bit of that too. And Acts.
You mean like in terms of him investigating and looking into?
And Paul would have been one of his sources.
Right.
Yeah. So, but Acts definitely, because he traveled, he lived it. He lived Acts, part of it, right? And that's in his style.
It is.
So, do you remember the other book that an early church writer said was written in Hebrew first and then translated to Greek?
Let me think.
The guy's name is Papias.
Which one
Papias.
was it? Started in Hebrew and translated to Greek. Was it Matthew?
Yeah.
Hey, all right.
Good memory, man.
Nice.
Good memory.
Nice.
So, so Matthew is traditionally stated to be like that, but just like Matthew, guess how much manuscript evidence we have that that's the case?
Zero.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. There's no Hebrew copy of the book of Matthew. There's no Hebrew / Aramaic. And when people say Hebrew, sometimes they mean Aramaic back then.
Sure.
There's no Hebrew Aramaic copy of the book of Hebrews.
Right.
So, but I think I have a reason why that would be. Let's think about this for a second. Who would the Hebrew version of the book of Hebrews primarily be written to?
Hebrews.
Right. But specifically where? The Hebrew Christians, right?
Right.
In Jerusalem.
Right.
That would be the main stopping point. Well, what happened in 70 AD?
Destruction of the temple.
Destruction. What would have happened to the letter if it was in Jerusalem and being spread around among the people?
Lost,
it would have been destroyed.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a really decent reason why, if it was written in Hebrew, why we don't have it. Because Alexandria, they would have wanted Greek. The Jewish diaspora and elsewhere in the empire would have probably done Greek as well because they used the Septuagint. So why would they use the Hebrew?
Why would it be in Hebrew?
So,
right. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. Again,
I thought
wish I could prove it, but still good stuff.
Man,
I still
too.
like it. I still really like it. Okay.
Me too. So, I gotta find a quote. So say something funny.
You got me on the spot here.
I'm just kidding.
So
what I'm trying to do here is I've got a quote from a guy here coming up that I want to grab, and I forgot. Okay, I got it. All right. That would be a good place to put a video clip. Can we do that post editing?
We can, a little da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, little elevator music.
There you go.
Time speed up. Okay.
The next quote is from Clement of Alexandria.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, remember who his mentor was?
Mm-hmm.
Pantene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Pro V.
Yep. Yeah. Shiny hair. Now, Clement of Alexandria in 200, quoted in Eusebius, says, he says that the epistle to the Hebrews is Paul's and was written to the Hebrews in the Hebrew language, but that Luke translated it carefully and published it for the Greeks, and hence the same character and style is found in this epistle and in Acts.
So it matches up exactly with
almost the exact same quote.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Yep.
So basically, Pantaenus and Clement. So I view those guys as one witness.
Because they work so closely together?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I view those guys as one witness.
Okay.
Because that's his mentor.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times you have the same viewpoint sometimes as your mentor on certain things.
I can understand that.
Yep. Next, so again, that was in Alexandria. Origen, he's also in the East. And what we find here is he states, and again, quoted by Eusebius, and again, we're not talking about the doctrine of Origen. I know that he was later viewed as a heretic. We look at these folks from historical value only.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So here's what he says. He says, but what has been said by men of old is not without weight, that the thoughts are the apostles, but the language and composition belong to someone else. So he's talking about Paul.
Okay.
He says, for this reason, the epistle was not prefaced with the name of Paul. Now, I dug a little bit deeper, and here's what he said.
So he's saying it was the thoughts of Paul.
Yes. But written by somebody else.
Okay.
Which corresponds with what Pantaenus and Clement state. Right?
Yeah.
But they're about the same time frame.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm about to read doesn't make sense if he's talking about Pantaenus or Pantaenus,
mm-hmm.
whatever his name is. So here's the other thing that he says. If any church, therefore, holds that this epistle is by Paul, let it be commended for this also. For not without reason have the men of old handed it down as Paul's.
Men of old. I'm noticing some similar language here.
Yeah. So men of old. So if he's in 240 AD,
mm-hmm.
men of old isn't talking about guys that were 40 years earlier or his contemporaries.
Right.
He's saying, what would we mean if we said men of old? I mean, we're not talking about 50 years ago. This is a term that really means we're talking about maybe 100 years ago,
sure.
150 years ago. So we're looking at the concept, I think, of him stating that the earliest tradition, as soon as that came out, was that it was of Paul. Okay. That's what I think Origen is stating.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So now, why that's important is going to be really found when we start to see the quotations of it.
Okay.
Okay. So we see now we're going to get into some different authorship suggestions. Barnabas was floated as an author. Tertullian in 200 says, for there is extant withal of an epistle to the Hebrews under the name of Barnabas, a man sufficiently accredited by God as being one whom Paul had placed next to himself in integrity of moderation.
So this is kind of an interesting one.
Yeah.
And I don't hate it, in terms of it.
Yeah.
I don't find it very disagreeable.
Right.
Because we know that Barnabas was a big time traveling companion with Paul.
Yes.
And you just mentioned, we can kind of take Clement of Alexandria and Pantaenus as being sort of the same quote because they work so closely together. Hence they have the same thought process. Barnabas going on all these missionary journeys with Paul, which we read about in the book of Acts, the fact that this writing would be similar to his or could be mistaken for Paul's, that would make sense to me.
It would. And like I said, I don't hate Barnabas.
Right.
But the thing is, we don't have any writings of Barnabas. I know people talk about the Epistle of Barnabas, but yeah, that's not it. But we don't really have any writings of his, so you can't really stake.
You can't compare it against it. But I mean, also the fact that at the end of Hebrews, how we've got some of these very familiar characters that are written to, like Timothy.
Yep.
Well, Barnabas wanted to know Timothy. Because again, he was a traveling companion of Paul. So would it make sense for him to also give a shout out to Timothy at the end of one of his letters? Yeah. So I'm just saying that I don't find this disagreeable.
Right.
That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying I'm convinced. I'm just saying I don't find it disagreeable.
Me too. The one thing I didn't study out that I think would be interesting is there evidence of Barnabas being in Rome, in Italy? If there's not, then it would make more sense that it would have been Paul. It would have, because Paul was definitely in Rome.
Definitely.
So, yeah, that's a little something to take a look at.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that one.
Yeah.
Honestly, out of all the people who I had thought about, maybe it was one of the gospel writers, maybe it was Paul, maybe it was Apollos. Barnabas is not one that I had considered.
Yeah. And then you could also think of it this way too. He had a little bad run-in with some false doctrine, right? Even Barnabas got carried away in Galatians 2.
Right.
So this could have been him having an opportunity to set the record straight.
Sure.
Yeah. Just a hunch. Probably means nothing.
Right. It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah. And then we have Clement of Rome, who Origen also states is somebody whose name has been floated around. But in the end, what Origen said is, but who wrote the epistle? Truly only God knows. and that's actually part of the problem as to why, or part of the reason why it wasn't accepted universally.
Because who wrote this?
Yeah.
What's the source of this?
Yes.
And I can understand that. Understand that. Now, wait a minute. Was it Clement of Rome? Was he one of the guys who was considered to be one of the first popes?
Yeah.
See, I would think that he would not be the author because, again, I'm not trying.
Well, it's a Catholic epistle, man.
Well, see, right. But I feel like that would give credit to a practice that we cannot find in Scripture.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like with the papacy, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like, wouldn't that give like some credibility to him and his position? Even though didn't even know he was a pope, right?
He didn't call himself one.
Right. He never called himself one.
Yeah.
So I feel like that would lend credit to that. So I don't feel like he would be a designated author for that reason.
And it's just, and we have some of his stuff, and it's not the same Greek.
Right. Right.
So I don't think that makes any sense.
Right. Okay.
So now let's take a look at the modern scholars and how they view the authorship.
People today,
or around our time.
Around our time. Not men of old.
Right. Not men of old.
Men of today. Okay.
Right.
Are they men of new if they're not men of old?
What's that?
Are they men of new if they're not men of old? All right. Sorry.
Modern men.
Yeah. Okay. Modern men.
Modern men.
That's getting edited out. Or is it?
No, of course not. We don't edit. We don't edit anything.
We don't.
That just takes too much effort.
It does. Yeah. Let's just let it fly. This is a real podcast with real people.
It is. I mean, hey, if we were actually live,
right?
Then
you'd have to roll with it, right?
We should totally do a live episode.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
That would be fun. We'd have nobody watching.
But
that's okay.
We could knock it off our bucket list.
There we go. So conservative scholars, Donald Guthrie, some of these guys, they're like, yeah. I don't really know who they are. I just found their quotes. He says Paul wrote it. Luke likely translated into Greek.
Okay.
F.F. Bruce, who is a renowned Old Testament, New Testament scholar, says Pauline theology, not Pauline style. Likely someone in Paul's circles.
Could be a Barnabas then?
Or Luke.
Yeah.
That's all of the stuff that I'm seeing from these scholars doesn't rule out what the old quotes state.
I mean, we're always what I like is that it's not Paul, but everybody has to mention Paul.
Because it's his theology.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's not him, but man, is it his theology. But it's not him.
Yeah.
But it's definitely his theology. But it's not him. Come on, guys.
Right.
You're not making a very compelling argument here. But anyway.
Well, but you'll see when we get into the Greek stuff, and we're going to do that a little bit.
Sure.
The Greek stuff, it's not Paul's Greek. It's not Paul's Greek. His Greek is very different.
Okay.
And he writes epistles. So we know what his epistle style is. It's definitely not his.
So what you're saying
style
is that it's not Paul, but it's strong in Pauline theology.
Yeah, exactly. It's got Paul's.
Matt Hartford is a modern scholar. On this list, he's there. Matt Hartford says, not Paul, but but strong in Pauline theology.
Yes, with my bachelor's degree from a school that doesn't exist anymore.
Hey, look. Well, there you go.
I am edumacated.
We've talked before about how anybody can be a scholar, Pat. Anybody can be a scholar.
I should print it. Now, we should get like plaques made up or something.
We should.
That says
now, if you will please, Professor Dillon, request that you continue in the list of conservative scholars and what they wrote.
Sounds good. Thomas Schreiner says not Paul, but strongly Pauline theology. David Allen writes, Luke wrote it, reflects Paul's teaching. Uh-huh. And our two favorite Calvinists, R.C. Sproul, Paul is the author, name withheld for Jewish audience, which that's what I think too, a little bit. Does that make me a Calvinist?
I don't think it does, no.
Okay, all right.
No. Calvinists also believe the sky is blue. That does not make me a Calvinist.
Okay. But are you sure they believe that the sky is blue?
Or am I even able to choose what I said, that the sky is blue?
No. You were predestined to say that.
I guess so.
John MacArthur.
Johnny Mac.
Paul wrote it. Theology matches his other letters. So he doesn't even, he just says flat out Paul wrote it.
Paul wrote it. Okay.
Paul wrote it. So there you go. You actually correspond to Johnny Mac. There we go. Now, progressive scholars. Okay, so Harold Attridge, not Paul, highly educated Hellenistic Jewish Christian, reflects Pauline theology. So, see,
Apollos?
Very well could be, right?
Yeah.
Now, Apollos actually, I don't know if I get into this a little bit later. Apollos is a modern suggestion. It doesn't exist anywhere in antiquity. It's a modern suggestion that people say Apollos. Because he was mighty. The way the scripture describes him is that he would be a guy that could possibly pull this off.
Educated, eloquent, learned in the scriptures.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Luke Timothy Johnson says, not Paul, reflects Pauline school influence. William Lane says, not Paul, shares Pauline theology, but different voice.
See, here's the thing, is everybody's saying it's not Paul. They're not saying who it could be, but it's not Paul. Okay,
right,
anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
But that it reflects his influence, his theology, right?
Yeah.
Because, again, when we get into those similarities here in a bit, and what I went through was not exhaustive in any way, shape, or form, but it's like, wow, these are very similar.
Sure.
Right? And our favorite liberal progressive, Bart Ehrman, he just breaks with everybody and says, not Paul, contradicts Paul in style and theology, attributes and is retroactive. He probably thinks it was a community somewhere.
No joke.
It was a village.
Bart Ehrman, it's not Paul. Not only is it not Paul, it completely contradicts everything about Paul in style and theology.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what, Bart Ehrman, remind me here. Ehrman. It's like if Bart Ehrman was a dentist. You know how you see those commercials where it says 9 out of 10 dentists agree? Bart Ehrman is that one dentist. It's like, nope, do not take this toothpaste. Don't do it whatsoever. He's the one.
He's the one.
He's the one.
He's the one. He's the contrary one.
Okay.
That's hilarious.
You're going to think about that every time you see a toothpaste commercial.
That should be the clip on the beginning of the episode.
It will be
right there.
It will be.
Okay.
And if you're seeing this, you know that it is. Okay. Okay.
Oh, dude,
what are we talking about now?
Good thing I have an outline. That was hilarious. All right. The theological similarities to Paul.
As opposed to what Dr. Ehrman suggests.
Yeah. Right. And again, when we've done a couple episodes throwing him under the bus.
Yeah. This is not one of them.
No, this is not one
anymore.
of them. No, I'm done with that.
Yeah.
I think we discredited it twice, and I think that's good enough. But again, when they talk about, hey, the theology of John is not like the synoptics, well, we proved that wrong. And the theology of Paul in the disputed and undisputed letters, the theology is all wrong. We proved that wrong, like hardcore.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't trust him at all in anything theological. And quite frankly, with a lot of his historical stuff, his Greek stuff, because
he is proven to be a unreliable resource on a lot of different fronts.
Biased. How about, we'll say biased. How about that?
Yeah, biased. I'm fine with that.
I don't want to get sued.
Okay.
So
he's probably got more money than we do anyway. So
this is for entertainment purposes only.
Only slightly educational, but yeah. Okay.
No, entertainment.
Okay.
We don't want to get sued.
Right.
But we don't have any assets, so.
Exactly. I took some legal classes, back in the day at community college where I met my wife. And the lawyer taught the introduction to law and the legal system. And she said, the number one rule is when you sue someone, don't do it if they don't have any money.
Right.
I don't have any money.
No.
No? Okay.
No.
Yeah.
I don't either.
It'd be a worthless endeavor.
And I mean, you work for
the state
and the Supreme Court division. So do you know any good lawyers?
I know a few. I know a few good judges. But they are unbiased and impartial. So they couldn't help me. Okay. Moving on, theological similarities.
But if they don't rule in your favor, they're staying in a Roach Motel at the next conference,
exactly right?
Okay.
Exactly right.
Because he's a conference planner.
I will pull the strings.
There you go. All right, theological similarities to Paul. My opinion, Paul and Luke wrote Hebrews. It is, I think, it's very possible that Paul wrote it in Hebrew and Luke translated it into Greek, or Luke took Paul's theology and dictation almost, possibly, but added his own, maybe not dictation, but added his own writing style to it.
I really like that. I've already mentioned earlier how much I like that, but I can't stand by that now because it's still too new. And I feel like
That's fine.
I feel like I'd just be riding that emotional wave, and we're trying to avoid that.
We're
trying to get people to avoid that. So I'm gonna chew on that a little bit, but I really like it.
I do too. And this is a newer opinion for me too.
Is it a modern opinion, or is this one that is? No, this is one that's been around for a little while, right?
Right. This is the ancient one.
Yeah. This is the ancient one. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. This is nothing new.
Right. So let's take a look at some theological similarities. Mediator of a new covenant. That is found Hebrews chapter 8, verse 6, chapter 9, verse 15, 12, 24. Jesus is called mediator of a better covenant. And then you have 1 Timothy 2, 5. There is one mediator between God and men, the man Christ Jesus. It's the same Greek word, same theological role. And that term's not used, if I'm remembering correctly, it's not used outside of Paul's writing. So that emphasis there would
very unique.
Would be Paul's theology.
Right.
Psalm 2 quotation, you are my son, today I've begotten you. Hebrews 1, 5 quotes Psalm 2, 7 as regarding the son's divine appointment. Acts 13:33, Paul's preaching uses this to talk about how God raised up Jesus. Mm-hmm. Now, in chapter 5, verse 5, it talks about relating that to his high priesthood. Mm-hmm. Well, what was Jesus raised up to be? The high priest. Yeah. Right? So that makes sense there. Mm-hmm. Seated at the right hand of God. Now, this is something interesting because it's found in other places. But when you look at how often the concept of Jesus being at the right hand, you find that it's concentrated in the book of Acts and in Paul's writings along with Hebrews. It's not really found outside to a great extent. Mm-hmm. So in Acts, you see Stephen talking about it in his final message. As a matter of fact, that's what got him killed, right? I see Christ standing at the right hand, right? So we see that. But Romans 8:34, Ephesians 1:20, Colossians 3:1, Paul repeatedly describes Christ seated at the right hand. And that's what we find in Hebrews as well. 1:3, 8:1, 10:12, 12:2. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So used repeatedly.
So we're seeing, it's very easy to connect these dots between Paul's writing and the writing in Hebrews.
Yes. And this one I find really interesting. The heavenly Jerusalem. Ooh. We have Hebrews chapter 11, verse 10. Yep. They were looking for a city whose architect and builder is God. And also verse 16, they were looking for a heavenly city. 12:22. You've come to. In fact, let's go to that one.
Sure.
So let's take a look at some of these verses. All right, so let's take a look at Hebrews 12:22. So why don't you read out of that ESV?
Okay.
12:22 through 24.
But you have come to Mount Zion and to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to innumerable angels in festal gathering, and to the assembly of the firstborn who are enrolled in heaven, and to God, the judge of all, and to the spirits of the righteous made perfect, and to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and to the sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel.
Yeah, so that's that whole concept of the heavenly city, right? Now, Galatians chapter 4, right, in verse 26. Well, let's do 25. It says, now this Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia and corresponds to the present Jerusalem, for she is in slavery with her children. But the Jerusalem above is free. She is our mother. For it is written, rejoice, barren woman who does not bear, and he quotes.
Very similar.
Very similar. So the concepts are similar. So same theology. And we don't find this really anywhere else.
You don't.
Not written
Not that concept.
explicit.
Not that concept. Definitely not.
Right. Faith of Abraham, Hebrews chapter 11, verses 8 through 19 really talks about the faith of Abraham.
And he hits that on this so hard in Romans chapter 4.
He does.
So hard in Romans chapter 4.
He does. As well as Galatians chapter 3.
Does anybody really else talk about the faith of Abraham? I mean, John the Baptist does. I mean, kind of. He references Abraham in the Gospels. But I mean, does anybody else hit on the faith of Abraham? Yeah.
Not like that.
I mean, I'm trying to think back. I'm like, where else in the New Testament do we read about really the faith of Abraham aside from Hebrews 11 and Romans, which are written by Paul?
Yeah.
I'm not coming up with anything.
Me either. And again, it's late.
It is, but I'm still. I mean, that's something I should be familiar with, even at this late.
Right. But again, me either.
I mean, Jesus was able to quote scripture pretty easily, well, not easily, but seamlessly in Matthew chapter 4 when he'd been fasting for 40 days and 40 nights. I should be able to think of where the faith of Abraham comes up in the new covenant at 8:11 on a Tuesday.
There you go, right? And we're talking about how late it is, man. People probably think it's like, what is it, like midnight over there?
Right, seriously, no.
It's a little bit after 8.
It is.
I mean,
and I know it's about to rain because my bones hurt. So, getting old, guys. It's
I will be in bed by 9:30.
Yeah.
But we see that similarity. It's pretty good. And then again, Galatians chapter 3, 6 through 29, the whole thing is about the faith of Abraham.
Yep. Yeah.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
So then we have, again, this is a little bit of a repeat, but looking from a different perspective. 2 mountains, 2 covenants. That's found in Hebrews chapter 12, verses 18 through 24, where he contrasts the covenants, just like Galatians chapter 4 does, which we just read.
Yep.
And so not only does he talk about the heavenly city, he talks about the contrast between the 2 covenants.
Yep.
See, we're kind of making our point, I think, aren't we?
Very strongly. And I'm just kind of looking through this outline. It's just really amazing. It's like you almost got a circle with Hebrews, Galatians, and Romans when it comes to the concepts and the things that they talk about. I mean, the fact that, and there's no doubt who wrote Romans and Galatians. I mean, unless you're talking to Bart Ehrman, right?
Well, actually, those 2 are undisputed.
There's undisputed ones, even by him?
I believe so.
Okay. So, but the fact that all 3 of those books are so closely tied with those concepts and ideas. I don't want to say concept, but truths, I guess. It makes you scratch your head a little bit.
Yeah. What about apostasy and falling away? Again, we have Hebrews 6, 4 through 6, impossible to move them again to repentance. Hebrews chapter 10, verses 26 through 31, talking about if we go on sinning willfully after receiving knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sin, right? That is Hebrews 10, 26, right?
That is, yep.
Yeah, okay. And then we have Romans chapter 11, verses 20 through 22, which talks about the branches being broken off for unbelief, right? And then Galatians chapter 5, verse 4, which talks about if you seek to be justified.
Severed by grace, is that one?
Yeah. If you seek to be justified by law, you've fallen from grace or been severed from grace. So again, those are very emphatic things. Now, 2 Peter does do the same thing. The whole... it would have been better for them never to have known salvation than having known it to turn away from it.
Yeah, but his style is a little bit different than Paul's. His style is a little bit different. Is different than Paul's. And we're not seeing as much of this between Paul's writing in Hebrews as we are from Peter in Hebrews.
Well, and just a little anticipatory of the next episode, 2 Peter actually is a very different style than 1 Peter.
Okay. Well, but Second Timothy is a little bit different than 1 Timothy. I mean, because it's Paul's last letter.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, it doesn't.
But there's reasons why, and I won't get into because I want people to watch it. I want people to watch the next episode.
Sure. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. We don't have to watch that one. They talked about it in the last one. Okay.
Yeah. What about this? Discipline and sonship. Hebrews chapter 12, 5 through 11 really talks about us being sons and how God disciplines us as sons, right?
Right.
Now, Romans chapter 8, verses 14 through 17 talks about the same type of concepts and how God has poured forth the spirit of our son, or of his son, or his spirit of his son into our hearts, by which we cry out, Abba, Father. Galatians 4 talks about the whole spirit of adoption as well. So this concept of being sons and what that entails, including discipline, is found in both of those all those passages as well.
Yep.
So again, we're seeing, that's why people say this is Pauline theology.
It's a very, it's an incredibly strong argument.
Yep.
Incredibly strong argument.
Yeah. And so people would think, well, if it's Pauline, theology, remember, even progressives and conservative modern scholars, it's Pauline, except for Bart.
Right.
It's Pauline theology. Right.
I see that.
So, well, why didn't Paul write it? Well, here's where we get into some different things. Okay, so the Greek similarities to Luke and Acts, it doesn't have a lot of Greek similarities to Paul. That's where it kind of rubs.
Wait,
the
it
wrong
doesn't
way.
have a lot of Greek similarities to Paul's Greek.
To Paul's Greek. It
Okay.
is different. Paul's Greek is good, but it's not like Luke's. It's a different writing style altogether.
So maybe you're going to get into this, but if Paul knew how to read and write in Greek, which we know that he did,
Yes.
the question is, why wouldn't he do it in Hebrews? Why have Luke do it?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I don't know the answer to that. What if Paul was dead or in prison by that time?
Okay.
Sure. Or not available, and Luke took it under his own.
It's kind of like how
moved by the Holy
Gospels
Spirit
were
to do
written
it.
after the death and resurrection and ascension of Christ.
Yeah, or because if the early witnesses are to be believed, he took the letter that was written in Hebrew and translated it into Greek.
Okay.
So actually, Paul wouldn't even need to have been there.
Right. If he wrote it and then,
to make that happen.
then Luke transcribed it from Hebrew to Greek. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. But now that I'm thinking about that, the ending of the book sure sounds like Paul.
But even if he still wrote the letter and Luke transcribed it later, that would be okay.
Well, no. What I mean is this. So maybe Luke. This is all hype.
Right. Speculation.
Speculation. Hypothesis. Luke could have had the letter, translated it, and then said, "Hey, Paul, what you think?" Yeah, that's all good. Here, let's do the epilogue here, or the benediction, the way that I normally do. There's all different kinds of ways. We weren't there. We don't know what happened.
Right.
But
it's just a thought that came to my mind. It's like, again, if he can read and write Greek, why would he just not read why would he just not write it in Greek?
And obviously there was probably some reason why that was the case, because it's definitely Pauline, right? We see the thematic similarities.
We do.
But then we look at the Greek and we see, and again,
This is the rub, isn't it? I mean, this is kind of the rub. Because it's like, it's Pauline theology, but the Greek is just a little bit more polished than what we know that Paul wrote. This is the rub.
This is the rub. And so what we have here is Hebrews chapter 1, verses 1 through 4. And so we're talking about elevated, polished Greek with extended periodic sentences. So Hebrews chapter 1, verses 1 through 4, one sentences across 4 verses. Now, Paul did do that, but not this polished, right?
Right.
It's very similar to Luke chapter 1, verses 1 through 4. Same type of construction, same type of level of sophistication in the construction, right? And some of this is a little bit arbitrary. I can see somebody saying, well, that's not, maybe you're grasping.
Haven't we also talked about how some of these writers, like we were talking about John, right, in our last episode, and how some of the later letters seems like it's how could John write this?
Right.
If this were his origins, and we talked about how people can grow, people can mature. Yeah. Could we say the same thing about Paul?
No,
because his letters were written some of his letters that we have were written while he was in prison, which is towards the end of his life.
Exactly.
That's why we can't say it about Paul. Okay.
Yep. And all of John's...
That was a test. You passed.
Yes. Yeah. And all... Thank you. And all of John's were written way later.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah. But we have Paul's from
up until pretty much till he died.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
And we can compare that. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So one of the next ones is there's some precise technical vocabulary. Like the division of soul and spirit, describing the inner faculties. That's fairly precise. In Paul Luke uses a lot of medical terminology that's very precise as well. Again, I don't know if that's a stretch, but it's something that kind of comes across. Dude, I don't know if it's just late. My nose itches like crazy, so sorry if I keep scratching it. That was really weird, wasn't it?
I didn't really notice until you said something.
Okay. All right. Just whatever.
Just rub it against the mic like this. No. There you go.
Okay. All right.
Don't own it. You just own your nose scratching.
I am, but I'm gonna have the camera pan to you when I do that.
Sounds good.
Because nobody wants to see that. Grammar similarities, elevated periodic sentence structure, like we talked about. one of the things that Luke does a lot, he uses a lot, and again, this is technical, I'm not going to go into it, frequent articular infinitives, highest fidelity to the Septuagint, more than any other writers. That's Luke in a nutshell. Frequent genitive absolutes. Again, Luke uses that concept a lot. Preference for compound words. And again, Paul does that too. He makes up a lot of compound words. And then shared vocabulary. And these are interesting words. Things like protokos, firstborn, uses it in Hebrews chapter 1, verse 6 and Luke chapter 2, verse 7. Interesting words. Usage of classical Greek instead of koine colloquialisms. Uses the word radiance in Hebrews chapter 1, verse 3. Luke chapter 1, verse 1 uses the word compile. So again, this wasn't like typical koine. It's more classical things. And then similar structural use of Old Testament quotations. So Hebrews extended citation chains, like Hebrews chapter 1, verses 5 through 13, forming the argument. I mean, think about how many passages he uses from there. In Acts, he has extended citation chains as well, using people's preaching. Now, again, this is something that I read. I can't remember who wrote it, but I thought this was really interesting. When we quote people today, it is very important that we get the verbatims right. It is. So when we put quotation marks on things, that means that this is a verbatim quote. Right. Now, the writer of this, and I can't remember who did it. Maybe we'll find out, maybe put it in a note, an overlay right now. He wrote that this was not a concept back in the first century. And that's why you see the differences in the quotes of Jesus and other people, where you have multiple quotes of the same event, like in the Synoptics. It really wasn't designed to get it down verbatim, because a lot of times they had these quotes memorized, or they did write them down, but they were doing shorthand. The important thing was to get the thought across, the meaning across. So if that's accurate, when Luke is writing Peter's sermon, Paul's sermons, it's not necessarily going to be a word for word quotation, although it could be. Right. Although it could be. It's very possible it could be. But that wasn't a thing in the ancient world, to do verbatim quotes, because they couldn't tape things. Right. Right? They couldn't record things. Now, God obviously could give them a verbatim quote through the Holy Spirit. But then Luke also did research for his Gospels. Right. So not really sure how that all works together. So it's very possible that when Luke gives these extended citation chains, like what happens in Acts chapter 2, verses 17 through 21, or in 13, chapters 33 through, or chapters 13 with Paul's message, this could just be one of the stylistic things that he does. Okay. I'm not, it's a possible explanation. It's a possible explanation. Okay. I'm okay with that. So that's just some of the Greek stuff. Again, I don't want to get into that stuff in a lot of detail, but suffice it to say, everything that I've studied, and again, some of these things, I'm not a Greek expert. I know enough to be competent, but I also know enough to be a little bit dangerous. And so I try to I try to hedge that stuff. Sure. All right. And a lot of people go into the Greek, and it's just a little pet peeve of mine. A lot of people go into the Greek and make arguments, and they've never studied Greek, or they don't really know Greek. And they think, oh, if this is the lexical definition, in other words, I open up a lexicon, or I look at this thing and it says, this is the definition. That's what I'm going to go with. And I'm going to interpret everything in light of that definition. That's not accurate. Right. That word can change meanings depending on if it's a genitive or a dative. It can change meanings depending on where it is in the sentence, what function of grammar it has in the sentence. It can change meanings if it's a middle voice or a passive voice or an active voice. It can change meanings for so many different reasons that people, just a little bit of encouragement to folks, if you're using Greek, be careful. Yeah. If you're using Hebrew, I've gotten burned by it before. Be careful. I've been burned by it so many times. Yeah. Right. It's like people make these huge points based upon a Greek concept, and it's completely wrong. Right. It might have it wrong. It's completely wrong. Well, I do think there's a strong argument here, based on the evidence presented, that it's Paul's what do they call it? Pauline theology. Pauline theology. Right. But Luke wrote it. Yeah. And we know that Luke and Paul traveled together from the book of Acts.
And we know that Paul was frustrated at times with the Jews because he would go and reason in the synagogues and they wouldn't believe what he was saying, even though he was, proving it using the scriptures that they would have been familiar with. I love the idea of Luke saying, look, Paul, I know you want to reach out to the Jews, but they're just not having you. So look, tell me what you would want to say to them. I'll put it in my style of writing, We'll send it out that way. You don't have to put your name on it, but everything you want to say is going to be in there, but it's going to be done in my style, so it's not recognized by you. I love the idea of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Again, the evidence seems pretty strong for it.
Right.
I love the idea of it. I know we can't definitively prove it, but I do like it.
Yep.
I do like it.
All right. Let's look at the canon reception.
Okay.
I think this is the last section.
Great.
Yeah, this isn't going to be a super long episode.
We're doing okay.
We'll get you better.
We're getting better. Great.
All right. So let's first off look at the patristic quotes or allusions to the book of Hebrews. In other words, when did it start to get used?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Clement of Rome, 1st century.
Okay.
1st century. In 1 Clement 36, 1-2, who, being the brightness of his majesty, is by so much greater than the angels, as he hath been by inheritance obtained a more excellent name than they.
Yeah. Now, when was this? It says 1 Clement, Volume 1. When was this written?
1st century.
But when in the 1st century?
Late 1st century.
Late 1st century. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're probably talking within, at the latest, 30 years after the writing of the book.
Okay.
If it's like mid to early 60s.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
So
so that's Hebrews chapter 1 all the way.
Yeah. And Clement of Rome, written in Rome.
Rome. Yep.
Where was the book of Hebrews written?
Rome. Italy.
Rome.
Yeah.
Yeah, Italy. So Shepherd of Hermas, also written in Rome.
Was that a Gnostic book?
No, it's not.
Shepherd of Hermas. What am I thinking of?
Shepherd of, not sure.
It's the Shepherd of something. All right, anyway.
Shepherd of Hermas was a book written in the earliest dates I've seen are the 90s, but early to mid 2nd century. And I've read it. It's interesting. It was never considered canonical,
right?
But it was considered of devotional value,
right?
And it really, if you look at it, what it really does in a lot of ways, it really emphasizes the personal righteous conduct that a Christian should have.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, is this the one where it's like the guy, he like sees an angel or he sees some woman or something like that. He's like, man, it'd be really cool if I had a wife like that. And like an angel comes and calls him out on that.
I believe so.
Isn't that, it starts out that
I read it once, long time ago,
and
but I think that's right.
She was like, yeah, but didn't you think in your heart that it'd be really cool to be with a woman like that? And isn't that a problem that you thought that? It really focuses on character.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Okay.
Because
I mean, I remember reading a little bit and I was like, man, this is really weird. But
yeah, it is kind of weird. So, but they viewed it as, okay, this is a good thing to read for you to understand what kind of personal righteousness you need.
Right.
You need to engage in.
Right. Which kind of tells you something about the early,
Yeah.
how they really believed a person's inner man should reflect.
Well, think about it this way too. The persecutions were going on crazy at that particular time. So when you recognize that what you believe, if you're going to believe it to the fullest extent that you might die for it, it's going to have an impact on your character.
Exactly.
If there's no persecution and you can just live it freely, you're just going to probably be like everybody else around you.
Right.
Right. So
you should be different.
Yeah. Shepherd of Hermas says, those who fall away after receiving this power shall not be saved, for it is impossible to renew them again to repentance.
That's Hebrews 6.
Yeah, it is. Now, this is what I find interesting. Guess what geographic location of the church had the most trouble accepting Hebrews as canon? Between the Eastern and the Western.
I almost want to say Rome.
Yeah.
Was it Rome?
Yeah.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Ground zero.
So the very place that it was written and the very place that it has the earliest quotes was the place that struggled with accepting it. Where in the
prophet is never accepted in his hometown, right, baby. Exactly.
So in the Eastern church, like especially in places like Alexandria and in other places in the East, it was accepted. But not in Rome, where it was written. And we get the quotes here.
Okay, man, that's beautiful. That's like the kind of beautiful irony that, it's just...
Yeah, but just because they're quoting it doesn't mean it's necessarily canon, right? It means that they viewed it as something important and worth using.
Who was the Russian guy? Was it Lenin who like outlawed Bibles, but they started printing Bibles in his house? Who was it in Russia that you mentioned?
No, that was Voltaire.
It was Voltaire. Okay, it wasn't Lenin. Yeah. But it's that kind of beautiful irony that you see that, right? It's like the one place it was written is wasn't accepted.
I thought, it's a delicious irony. Isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah. So now you have Justin Martyr, who he's interesting. He started out in Ephesus and then ended up moving also in Alexandria, but he wrote from Rome. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have another Roman guy here.
We're really going to drive this home in Rome.
Mid-2nd century. It says, and when he again brings the first begotten into the world, he says, let all the angels of God worship him. So again, there we go, right? Now, Irenaeus, he was in Smyrna to begin with, which is in the east, right? It's in Turkey. And he ended up in Lyon, which was in Gaul, which is, Lyon, France. Mm-hmm. So we're talking way west.
Yep.
So this isn't a direct quote. This is more of an allusion, but he's going to have a direct quote here in a second, I believe. He says, for Enoch, when he pleased God, was translated in the same body in which he pleased him, thus pointing out by anticipation the translation of the just. So a little similar to Hebrews chapter 11, verse 5, the same content.
Right.
And then also Irenaeus writes, Christ destroyed him who had the power over death, that is the devil, and delivered those who through fear of death were all their lifetime subject to bondage. That's absolutely Hebrews chapter 2.
Yep.
Right?
No argument.
Yep. So Clement of Alexandria, since he talked about the authorship, it makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. So he says in Stromata 2.3.11, he says, who being the brightness of his glory in the express image of his person. It's very similar to Hebrews 1.
These early writers really liked Hebrews 1, didn't they?
They did. But then he quotes 4:12. It says, for the word of God is quick and powerful, sharper than any two-edged sword.
Hebrews 4.
Yeah. And then he quotes Hebrews 7, 1-3, Melchizedek, king of Salem, without father, without mother, without descent, having neither beginning of days nor end of life.
Yep.
Right. And then Tertullian, also early 3rd century, 200 to 220. Mm-hmm. Let us run with patience the race that is set before us.
Hey, all right. Getting a little bit further, deeper into the book of Hebrews now.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then apparently Origen also uses Hebrews 4:12 and quotes it as well. So you can see it's fairly well quoted.
It is.
Fairly well quoted. Now, church reception. The Eastern Church, mid to late 2nd century, Hebrew is already used in the Alexandrian Church, as we see. And again, it makes sense. If within the schools down there, like Pantinus and Clement of Alexandria, they headed up some schools down there. If that was the case, then, and if they viewed it as Paul in a translation of Paul's writings by Luke, of course they're going to view it as scripture.
Sure.
Of course they're going to use it.
Sure.
Right. So again, we
know from previous episodes here on the podcast that they accepted Paul's writings as being divinely inspired.
Oh, without a doubt.
So if they think, if it was believed that Paul wrote it, they were going to use it.
Exactly. So again, Shepherd of Hermas lets us know that the church had received it. Justin Martyr lets us know that the church had received it. Theophilus of Antioch in 180, he has a possible allusion to Hebrews 3:13, exhort one another each day, as it says, day after day, as long as it is called today in the book of Hebrews.
Yeah, it was a little bit loose, but
I
see it.
It's so, and that's the thing about illusions, right?
It is.
It could be, might not be, right? And
very similar, but I mean, encouraging and exhorting each other each day, that's also like, the basis of what we do,
right?
So,
right.
But I get it. I see it. I do see it.
But we see, and again, with things that Clement of Alexandria said and Pantina said about it being Paul's and all that stuff. So we can see that they accepted it fairly
They accepted
early.
it. Yeah. Eastern Church liked it.
Yeah. Now, the Western Church, specifically Rome in that area.
Yeah. We spoiled that one, didn't we?
Yeah. Late 2nd to 3rd century, they still some hesitation, and it was because it was anonymous.
Yeah.
And Paul didn't write anonymous books.
That's
you
a
can make
hang-up.
an argument.
Yeah, I mean that's a hang up. Paul would, but again, we've talked earlier in this episode as to why that may be, and I think there could be a strong argument as to why that might be that he would not put his name on it. But I get it. I understand that.
Yeah,
I understand it,
and you can see why they might have to work through it.
Sure, I'm okay with that.
Right, me too. And the thing that you kind of see a little bit later on is that they understood the book was of value. It had it had apostolic thought in it. It had apostolic weight to it.
And you're seeing that in the 2nd and 3rd century, that they're still working through this. Now, see, this is interesting too, because a lot of people say, you Christians are so ignorant, you're so naive, you'll just believe anything. Mm-hmm. You'll just believe anything. We're talking a couple hundred years after it was written. They're still working through this to say, look, I mean, is this a reliable source? Is this a good resource? Is this something that we can credit to being divinely inspired?
Right.
I mean, that's a lot of thought to be putting into something.
Yeah, it is. It is. But remember, the Eastern Church didn't have this issue at all.
They didn't.
Right? So this lets us also know that there was not one big universal church in the sense of authority.
Right.
That did not exist.
Which, again, they like to think that the Catholics did that. They're the ones who put the stamp of their approval on that. Well, that's not what we're seeing.
No. That's not history.
Right.
That's revisionist history.
Right.
That's revision. So we're not seeing that at all. So this concept of the West waiting on it because of its anonymity, it wasn't up to them to determine what was in the canon. What they were trying to do was saying, do we recognize this as canon? Do we recognize this as authoritative? In other words, is this apostolic? And that was really the question. They understood that the book was apostolic, but they had to hang up about the anonymity, and that was the issue. In the East, there was no question about it, even though it was anonymous, because there was a strong line of attestation from men of old that this was whose it was. Right. Now, you would think Rome would get that since it was written from there. And Clement of Rome, Shepherd of Hermas. Right. I mean, come on, guys.
But it just wasn't the case.
Right. So Tertullian, that's why, and maybe this is the case because Tertullian in 200 talks about it was Barnabas. And now we're like, wait, hold on. It's anonymous and it's Barnabas, but it looks like Paul. They could accept it even if it was Barnabas, because if they think about it, Barnabas was a traveling companion of Paul, and that would have added to the apostolic authority. Now you get someone like Cyprian in 230, no explicit quotations from Hebrews, doesn't list it. Mm-hmm. Novatian in 230 alludes to Hebrews 6 without naming the book. Then in the 4th century, now also in the Muratorian fragment, I didn't put this down in the notes, the Muratorian fragment, which was also written in Rome, does not list the book of Hebrews. And the Muratorian fragment has a canon list in it. And Hebrews is not in it. Hebrews is
not in it. Okay.
It's not in it.
Okay.
Because I think it was Eusebius discussing how it was antilegomena, which means it was one of the disputed books.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But churches still used it, right? They still used it. They still valued it as authoritative. Some didn't accept it. So it's not like all the Western authorities and churches said, this isn't canon. This isn't inspired. There was debate, which means you had some for it, some against it.
Right.
There was no debate in the East. So because there was debate still in the West, they were like, we're not going to put it on the list.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
But in the 4th century, things start to change a little bit. Athanasius in 367 lists Hebrews. Right? So he listed as Paul's, saying that Paul had 14 epistles instead of 13.
Hebrews being one of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Hilary of Poitiers quotes from Hebrews chapter 1.
Nice pronunciation there. Yeah.
Thank you. Ambrose, who was Augustine's mentor, cites Hebrews frequently. Augustine includes Hebrews in a canonical list. Jerome states, he being a Hebrew wrote in Hebrew, Luke the evangelist translated into Greek.
So he kind of matches up with some of those other guys there who think that it was Paul's authorship, but Luke was the one who transcribed it.
Now, it's about 150 years later, right? But still, he's picking that up. And then finally the Council of Carthage.
The good old Council of Carthage.
Good old Council of Carthage. So, okay. Just a quick segue.
All right.
Okay. I saw a reel this week. I normally don't quote on.
Do we need to include it in the video for the cats?
I don't know if I still have it.
Okay, all right.
I might be able to find it.
Okay.
But it's this lady who's like debunking Christianity, right? And I normally don't comment on these things. But she talks about how the canon was set in the Council of Nicaea and the Book of Enoch was removed from the canon.
Yeah.
And anytime anybody ever states that the canon was set at the Council of Nicaea.
Wasn't that Council of Nicaea was like 1300 AD?
No, it's 324, I believe.
324? I might be thinking of a different council.
Council of Nicaea didn't discuss the canon at all.
It was never on the list.
It wasn't
an agenda item.
It wasn't. It was completely different. So anytime somebody says the Council of Nicaea, they're coming across as real authoritative, right? And so the Council of Nicaea stated that this was, this was the canon. I immediately flush just about everything that they're going to say.
Well, we talked about the Council of Nicaea in a previous episode. Okay, that was just one group of people. That did not speak for the church worldwide.
Well,
didn't we?
That was an ecumenical council.
It was?
It was.
Okay.
It was. But it didn't deal with the canon because canon was more of a regional issue. So you have the Council of Laodicea, in the 360s that did their thing. If Canon 60 is legitimate, it laid it all out. Council of Carthage, Council of Hippo laid out the canon. But again, 397.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they simply recognized what the church had already been recognizing up to that point. It wasn't authoritative in the sense. And again, it was the Council of Carthage. Right?
Not Nicaea.
Well, and not universal.
Right.
This
is one of those that was regional.
This was North African.
Right.
Council of Hippo, same thing. Council of Laodicea, that was Eastern. Well, up in Turkey, right? So I believe that's where it was. Constantinople, maybe. I forget where it was.
That's okay.
I just know what they covered.
Right.
I forget where it is.
Gotcha.
Maybe it's not there at all. We'll put a footnote. We got a lot of footnotes.
We have many. That's the beauty of post editing.
And that's also the beauty of our caveat that we made in the beginning, because my brain is starting to slip.
Yeah, I'm feeling the transmission slipping.
Yeah.
That's okay. We're good. We're almost there. Yeah.
My transmission slipping or your transmission slipping?
It's one or the other.
You're feeling my transmission slipping?
I do.
Okay, man.
It's a dual transmission.
Yeah. So, but anyway, anytime someone says that, I'm just gonna flush what they say.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you don't know. Because it's one thing to say it off the cuff like what we're doing. It's another thing to be like, I'm going to put thought and editing and time into this. I'm going to purposely make this real and get all my information wrong.
Right.
Because the Book of Enoch was not in the canon and removed.
Right.
Anyway, let's take a look at modern scholars.
Yep.
Modern scholars, conservative and progressive, actually agree surprisingly on the acceptance of the canon. They said it was accepted in the East, it was somewhat accepted in the West, but disputed a little bit in the West, and it took a little bit of time for it to get.
Great to see those guys get along.
I know, right? It's beautiful. They state that it was accepted early Eastern, but not in the West. Now, here's what they state. They state some didn't like the anonymity, and this is where we get to the point. It actually helps to prove the Gospels were never anonymous. Because think about it.
Oh, snap.
Right?
I see what you're saying here. Yeah, because since they accepted the Gospels so readily,
yes.
And if anonymity was the reason they didn't accept Hebrews, that must mean the Gospels were not anonymous. That's good stuff right there.
Yeah.
That's good stuff right there.
And check it out. Every time we have a copy of the beginning of a Gospel, it has the Gospel according to written on it.
Right. Right.
We never have a copy of the Gospel without the header.
Right. Right.
Never.
Interesting. No, that's an important point.
Yep.
I kind of wish we would have brought that up when we were going over the Gospel.
Me too.
You know what I'm saying?
I didn't.
I wish
think
we
of
would
it
have,
then.
but we hadn't thought about it.
Yeah, I hadn't.
But I wish we would have, because it's like, you know why? I mean, it was accepted as the Gospel of John.
Yeah.
Hebrews. This is the same thing.
Say,
The same problem you had when you were over here.
You like my plant
getting in your way. All right, sorry. I know you love your plants.
Take that.
And watching me like smack it right in front of you is like probably
That's okay.
insulting.
Hey, God disciplines us.
Right.
You discipline that palm tree,
Yeah,
man.
take that plant. This isn't Florida. Anyway. But yeah, I wish we'd have brought that up when we were doing the Gospel of talking about John, because that's an important point. It was accepted. And why was it accepted? Because, I mean, they never questioned the authorship.
Yeah.
Why wasn't Hebrews accepted as quickly? Because anonymous author. Yeah. Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. Suspicion was not based on doctrine, but authorship.
Sure.
So the doctrine people recognize, man, this is Pauline.
Yeah.
So, and they used it, but not everybody accepted it. So
Right.
we're going to, out of abundance of caution.
Well, this is great. I mean, putting this under the microscope has been really helpful for me, because I've always kind of thought, I mean, I've read through the book of Hebrews many, many times, much as you have. And I've come across, and I've wondered who's the writer. And I've come across things where I'm like, that looks a little bit like Paul's writing, something that he would say. I would strongly speculate that he was the writer. But putting this under that kind of microscope, I mean, again, because the author is still anonymous, we can't definitively say it was Paul. But I do like that argument that Paul wrote it. and Luke transcribed it using that highly polished Greek.
Yeah.
And the similarities we can see in the Gospel of Luke. Yeah. And, the connections we have between Hebrews and Romans and Galatians, I mean, that circle that we have over and over and over again, I mean, that's good stuff.
Well, see, and it makes sense because all three of those books share a lot of the common concepts that are through it.
Right.
I mean, Paul's really diving into those Old Testament concepts in the book of Romans.
Yep.
And also, I mean, that's what the book of Galatians is about.
Yep.
So it makes sense that they share common concepts. So, but once the Western Church accepted it as Pauline, they accepted the book. Yeah. So it's like the Eastern influence, what they had already figured out, finally won out.
Finally caught up to the West.
All right, guys. Yep. It is. We can't. And again, maybe the Eastern churches were like, hey, here are the arguments for this stuff, guys. You gotta listen to this. I mean,
they had the Cat CPR in their day.
They did. They're like, check this out. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? They're
Introduce you to my friend Clement of Rome. Here's what he says. Go ahead, tell him, Clement. No.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Clement was dead by then.
Right.
But it's like, I mean, you can imagine the discussions that they would have had about this, right?
Lively debates. Okay. Excellent stuff.
Maybe at that Council of Nicaea, they had a sidebar about it. We have a breakout session on the canonicity of the book of Hebrews.
A breakout session. It's going to be in Stadium 3.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to continue in the general epistles in the next episode. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what are we going to talk about next time?
I haven't written it yet. I'm in the process of writing it, but my goal is to be able to handle James, 1st and 2nd Peter, and Jude.
Okay. So is James next? Maybe, possibly.
Yes. Well, okay. I'm. My goal is I want to do all four of them
in that order.
In that
James,
order,
1st and 2nd
but I want to
Peter
do all four of those in the next episode, if possible.
Oh, wow. Okay.
If possible.
That is a tall order, my friend. Now they're shorter books. I mean, they're not as long as Hebrews,
right?
So maybe that's okay, but still.
Well, but they're all except for 1 Peter. 1 Peter is way more accepted, but James, Jude, and 2 Peter have a little bit more headwind.
Sure.
So we'll discuss that. And again, I'm not sure. I think the headwind's going to be fairly easy to go through, and to fix. But we'll see as I write it what we're going to do. But we're definitely going to get into James next time.
Excellent.
And we did record the episode with the textual critics, so that's going to be coming out after we're done with the general epistles. That was a great episode. So we'll get that edited and continue to move on.
Excellent. Well, Cats, we hope that you have found this information and episode very encouraging and edifying. This is coming out September 1. The next episode that Matt was just talking about is going to be October 1. Remember that we're on Spotify and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, like, share, help get the word out. Until next time, I'm Jeremiah, this is Matt, and curiosity may have killed the cat.
So you're like signing out for me now too?
Well, because we kept messing up. I'd be like, I'm Jeremiah, and this is Matt, and curious, you know what I mean? So I was just trying to package it up pretty cleanly, and I thought I did a good job.
You did a good job, but I wanted to mess it up.
No, you did it.
I did. No, Go ahead. You did it great. Let's do it again.
Curiosity may have killed the cat.
But it doesn't have to kill you.
We'll see you next time.